Obviously, it's super convenient when you have a plan and you're able to just do everything on that plan. You don't have to be flexible and be like, okay, then I have to take the next best thing. But it's always better to take the next best thing than not doing anything. That's actually what makes the difference between not getting there versus actually getting to the end goal. This is the My Vegan Personal Trainer podcast with Remy, episode number 9.
Welcome to the My Vegan Personal Trainer podcast, where it's all about living a fit, plant-based lifestyle so you can thrive in life while caring for the planet and animals. And now, your host, medical doctor, CrossFit athlete, and online personal trainer, Remy.
Hey, it's Remy and welcome to episode number 9 of the My Vegan Personal Trainer podcast. Out of all episodes that this podcast will ever create, this is one of the least technical but most important episodes to implement if you intend to live a sustainable fitness lifestyle. You can ask anyone living a sustainable fitness lifestyle long term about their top pivotal approach to fitness, and most, if not all, will point to what we'll be discussing today. So it's very important you not only listen, but also start by living by today's presented approach if you want to achieve a sustainable fit lifestyle long term. Because although the all-in or nothing approach could seem reasonable and maybe even pretty badass at times, it rarely is the most optimal approach for an imperfect human living in an imperfect world. Subscribe if you're not a member of the tribe already. Before we begin, just a boring disclaimer. The information provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not meant to take the place of any professional medical, dietetic, or fitness advice. Consult with a relevant professional for your specific situation. And now, without any further ado, let's get into the meat of the episode. So the all or nothing approach is basically the path of a perfectionist. Anything less than perfect is considered a failure. This mindset can lead us to feelings of discouragement and may even cause us to quit our fitness journey when we're not able to follow that perfect line. This approach basically gets us to a phase where we are all in, where we are doing the work we need to be doing, and everything's good until bang! Life hits and suddenly you can't follow the perfect plan. What happens here is instead of finding, okay, what the next best thing I can do in this situation, you'll be like, I can't do my perfect plan, so screw it. You stop and then there goes some time before you can restart and then you start again after some time. So there's this starting, stopping pattern to your approach towards a goal. This makes it hard, actually impossible to build any momentum, and progress actually gets slower when you're having this approach of either you're fully perfect or you're not doing it at all. So you're just actually moving slower compared to if you had a different approach, which I'll get more into later during the episode, but which you also can imagine that we'll get to as an alternative solution. Also, this approach can give us feelings and put us in a state of stress, anxiety, and discouragement, which will make it harder to stick to the end. When we're putting so much pressure on ourselves to be perfect, and when it doesn't happen, when it's not possible for that to happen, it becomes overwhelming and we get unnecessarily discouraged, even though we're actually doing a great job. An important thing to think about when we say, okay, it's perfect. At the end of the day, perfect is just an illusion. What is perfect for you today might not be what is perfect for you some years ahead when you have more knowledge, more experience about something. And then the perfect approach would be different. So what is perfect? Things can more often than not always be done in a better way, in a more effective way. Perfection is just an illusion we have created up in our mind. And to reflect over what I said here in the intro for the episode, we are an imperfect human living in an imperfect world. So how do you think it's gonna go with your perfect plan in this world of chaos? Let's view some examples where the all or nothing mentality typically works against us in the fitness realm. Let's start talking about fixed meal plans. So for an initial phase, when you're starting to get into the right ballpark of eating such that you are more in alignment with your fitness and health goals, then it's totally fine to have a fixed meal plan that we just are following, committed to, and not deviating from in the beginning, where we get new habits and get some ideas of how our meals from day to day should look like, such that having habits that actually are in alignment with our goals. But pretty soon, if there's absolutely no flexibility injected into that meal plan, like for example having options to choose between, or learning how to deviate from the meal plan by, for example, getting the amount of calories and macros that needs to be for each meal, then we got trouble, because then either you'll be on the meal plan or you're off the meal plan. And whenever you're off, that's a failure, and you're now at a risk of just saying, F it, I'm out. I'm just gonna binge now. I'm just gonna go to some fast food restaurant now. Also, for example, you're out traveling, then you also have the risk of not being able to get access to the ingredients that you normally have in your home. So that means, again, you will just be off the meal plan, and you are again failing. You're not being perfect anymore. Again, remember, you are an imperfect human living in an imperfect world. So it's important that we have a plan that can actually mold according to the situation we are getting exposed to, else we're bound to fail. Now, let's say you don't have a fixed meal plan, but rather you have macros and a caloric number to go for on a day-to-day basis. The purpose of those numbers is not to be hitting those exact digit every day, but more to be in the right ballpark. Typically, you'll be getting a range within which you would like to be in when hitting your protein, your calories, your carbs, your fat. Those macro and caloric numbers, they come from what works for most based on the scientific literature that we have available. But it's just important to say that the best number that would work on average for a human being. In your exact case, maybe a higher or lower number would fit better. We don't know that, so that's why we use a number as a standard to go by, and then over time we can try to have a period where we adjust some variables and see if a different approach fits better for my individual situation. So those numbers should not be viewed as magic numbers that once we hit that the only way we will get ahead. It should more be viewed as numbers that should guide us to be in the right ballpark. Just like with a meal plan, it's also helping us get in the right ballpark. It's not because that's the only way of eating that will be conducive to progress. And again, just to refer back to what I already said, perfection is an illusion. You might think you had everything dialed in, everything is well tracked, you hit all the numbers to the exact number as you have been prescribed, but maybe you're unaware that you actually read a label with error. Maybe by a mistake you typed in the wrong amount, or you used the wrong unit for a certain food. Maybe the label on the food itself, it's not in alignment with exact nutritional content of the food that you are actually eating. And then there is one thing is what you are eating, what you're putting through your mouth, and another thing is what is actually getting absorbed and used by the body. So there are so many variables that will, on a day-to-day basis, likely cause you to never ever be perfect. So that's why main takeaway should be here that the numbers just help us get in the right ballpark. That's it. And obviously we want to strive to be as close to those prescriptions as possible, but if we were 5-10 grams above or below, so what? Doesn't really make a difference. Another classic is the categorization of putting foods. So we have good foods, bad foods, clean foods, dirty foods. And this is actually something I actually did for a very long time when I started my own fitness journey, getting into understanding macros and foods, what are good foods, bad foods. Then you'll be reading online, going on various websites in terms of, okay, you need to eat this, not this type of food. You want to eat clean. And even though it can get you very far, it may help you actually achieve your goal and come very far in your journey, in the long run, it's not sustainable for most. And it's important to remember there is no one food that's unhealthy, such that this is why I'm unhealthy. It's not this one food that will determine whether how you're eating is healthy or unhealthy, but it's rather how the big picture looks like. So how is the majority of the things I'm eating, is that on the healthier side? If yes, then we are eating a healthy diet. Obviously, if we're only having candy for breakfast, lunch, dinner, then obviously we have an unhealthy diet. But if you're eating 80-90% of your food choices, they have come from healthy sources, and let's say like you have 10% coming from fast food, junk foods, candies, cakes, then it's not a big deal. So the majority of what we are having should be the healthy foods. And then there can always be some space for a little candy here and there. A piece of candy is not unhealthy. It just doesn't really contribute to much other than give us calories. So you don't really have fiber, vitamins, or minerals in it. But if that's already taken care of by the majority of the thing that you eat, then it's okay to have a little candy here and there, or cake if you're into that. By allowing the implementation of those less healthy foods, it makes our way of eating much more sustainable and realistic to adhere to for a very long time. Because it allows for more flexibility, it leads to you not feeling restricted, and it's much easier to follow the plan. I myself, when I first started my fitness journey, I was used to eating a lot of candy and chocolate, and I would initially actually also be struggling in terms of now I'm eating healthy, the good food, but I'm having this little craving, like a little chocolate I want to be having right now. And then sometimes in the beginning I would be having a period where I would just be focusing on not deviating, but then over time, after ending up falling into that trap, and then when I did fall into the trap, I would actually eat more than would make sense. Then it started making more sense to me that I would be better off if I had some sort of rule, sort of guideline to myself in terms of, okay, what can I allow myself in when it comes to eating the less healthy foods, so candies, cakes. And then what I had that worked very well for me was I actually set the rule that I can have one little piece of candy a day if I want to. And by having that, then over time, that that craving got less and less and less, because I was allowed to do it in moderation, obviously, but I still allowed. It's not like I could not have it. So it's not, so you don't end up thinking about the food you can't have, because you could have it. So when we're in it for the long run, it's important that we have some wiggle room so that we can flow. And when we have sometimes those intense cravings, obviously we can willpower through, but if that happens on a consistent basis on top of everything else you got going in your life, it's not very sustainable. So something to bear in mind. So it's a good idea to have a personal rule in terms of, okay, I like for what I had personally was, okay, one time a day I can have a piece of candy, or it could be once a week, then I can have treat myself. Find something that works for you. Again, it's not an excuse now to ruin the whole thing. Again, if we have too much flexibility in our way of eating, that can also lead to compromising our results. And having this clean versus dirty food approach can actually lead you to lacking micronutrients if, for example, you just go fully clean and only have a handful of food that you consume on a daily basis. Let's say you decide, I'm not gonna have fruits because there's sugar in it. Now what you're missing out from the fruit is fiber. You have the micronutrients, the vitamins and minerals that you're missing out on. So variety is important when it comes to our way of eating to gain a micronutrient rich ingestion intake. The takeaway from this example here is it's not this one food that will make the whole diet ruin and make that diet be unhealthy, but it's rather what you're having in the majority. What does your diet consist of the most? Is it mostly of those nutritious, good, healthy foods? Great, then you're having a healthy diet. Is it all just fast food, processed foods, candies and cakes that you're having for most meals, and that's what's dominating what you are intaking? Obviously, then you are having an unhealthy diet. Next, let's take training as an example. If you have the all or nothing mindset when it comes to training, let's say you have a week where you are fully busy, where it's very hard to get all 4 workouts in for that week. So what will then happen is you won't work out at all. Where instead you could still show up to the gym, and then let's say instead of having 2 hours of working out, you only have 1 hour or maybe 30 minutes, then you do that instead. So you will then still be able to get an okay amount of stimulus for that week compared to if you did not go to work out at all, because you can't do the whole thing. Obviously, it's super convenient when you have a plan and you're able to just do everything on that plan. You don't have to be flexible and be like, okay, then I have to take the next best thing. But it's always better to take the next best thing than not doing anything. That's actually what makes the difference between not getting there versus actually getting to the end goal. And let's say you have a killer week where you really don't have any time to get yourself to the gym. Well, then you could do micro workouts, for example. Like you do as many push-ups that you can for 1 minute, for example. And then later during the day when you have maybe some minutes more, then you could do tons of squats or some burpees. So you're still getting things done in alignment with the principle of doing the next best thing. Remember, progress is not always linear. Setbacks, failures are part of the process. And as I already mentioned, I will repeat it again because this is super important. Remember again, perfection is an illusion that we create for ourselves. And I think it's also because we want to feel that we are in control. But the only issue comes when we try to control things that we actually don't control. That leads to feelings of being overwhelmed and anxious and getting discouraged. The approach we want to take instead of being all in or nothing can be explained with some analogies that I will give you. Let's say you're in war, you're on the battlefield, and you get shot, or you lose a limb, you lose your left leg, and you get the bleeding under control, so your circulation is stable, and you're able to do something, and you're not unconscious. So now, do you just lay there and just not do anything and wait till somebody comes and attacks you, or do you still try to move forward, get yourself into a better position, still do something, even though you just lost your leg? Another analogy, less brutal, is for example, you have a elastic rubber band, and you have glass. If you take a hammer and you hit the glass, it will just hit. You will hit it, and bang, it's done. It's finished. This type of plan, a plan that's made of glass, once life hits, then it falls to pieces, and you consider yourself a failure. Versus if you're more of a rubber band, when life happens, when, for example, you get pressure to this rubber band, instead of breaking, it will typically just extend. And once life's pressures then get alleviated, it will then find back to where it was initially. So we want to be rubber over glass. So whenever you can't do what was on the plan, always ask yourself, okay, so what's the next best thing I can do? You want to be consistently good, not perfect. And when you're always doing the next best thing, then you're consistently good. Like we talked about when it came to nutrition, if the majority of the food you have are nutritious on the healthier side, then you're having a nutritious, healthy diet. Same thing goes with, you look at your fitness journey as a whole. If you are most days getting your sleep, you are getting your food, you're training in, and then there's a little room for maybe going out for a night or having some drinks here and there. As long as what's happening in the big picture is in alignment with where we are heading to, then we are moving forward in a sustainable fashion. It's typically not what we do as an F-up that actually contributes to anything. It's what we do right after we realize we have effed up. After we've effed up, let's say we deviated from our meal plan in some way, do we then say, then F it, I'm just gonna go crazy now? Or do we then say, okay, fair enough, it was a rough day, we get back to it again tomorrow? Or that is going to make the difference. That's actually what contributes to whether we are going fully overboard with our calories or not. It's not the F up itself, but how we react to it. And it's important that we become our number one fan. At the end of the day, if we are not kind to ourselves, we speak poorly to ourselves in a way that's not constructive, what purpose does that serve? Then when we do F up, and it will happen, instead of being like, I'm a loser, I'm a this, I'm a that, again it happens. Instead, the self-talk should be more like, this is actually how I have my self-talk when in moments of effing up. So let's say something like, I don't know, let's say I deviated from my food protocol. So I'll be like, okay, this happened, fair enough. What can we learn from this? Why did it happen? What can I do next time I should find myself in a similar situation? Okay, fair enough. Now let's just get back to walking the line we are meant to walk. So let's speak kindly to ourselves. And it's totally fine to call ourselves out. I'm not saying that. But it should not be that we are abusing ourselves verbally in an unconstructive fashion, where the only result is just putting ourselves in a dark hole. To refer back to what was said in the intro to this episode about the most critical approach people who are successful on the fitness journey take, if you listen to past clients' testimonials that you can find on our website, or for example, also if you go back to episode 002, with Pernille Rasmussen, a previous client, then you'll often hear something in the line like, now when I eat candy or I do deviate from my food plan, I don't really feel bad about it. I just get back to it the next day again. Also, when I work with clients and maybe they've been struggling for a period when we just first started, and now suddenly they're starting to say things like, I just had a cupcake the other day, and normally this would just put me down a spiral of just being frustrated and everything. But now I'm actually I was okay with it because I know it's still in alignment with my goals and I'm still progressing forward even though I had this little piece of candy. Or when, for example, a client says that I'm not there where I want to be at visually with my body, but I'm getting stronger, I'm feeling great, and I do see some changes. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm enjoying the process and I'm loving the feeling after having been to the gym. When I hear things like that, then my inners start to be like, okay, I'm relaxed. I'm like, okay, great. We kind of made it, because now it's just a matter of time before those results will start to be more and more visible. Because again, the most important thing is that we can be consistent and that we have something, we are following a certain protocol that is sustainable. We can do for a long time as lifestyle, because then it's just a matter of time before we'll get there. So if ever you are doing something in your fitness journey and you feel like there's like this here, it is very taxing mentally, and you don't feel this is sustainable, then a good thing is to just hit the brakes and just reflect over, okay, why is it not sustainable, and think about ways of how you could make it more sustainable, your approach to nutrition, for example. So at the end of the day, it's a balance between accuracy, flexibility, and consistency. Number one is we always want to be consistent with whatever approach we choose to go by. And typically, the more accurate we are, the faster we can get to our goals, as long as we are consistent with that accurate approach. So we need to go by a level of accuracy that is actually sustainable, because if we are too accurate with everything, let's say with tracking our food, if we have to be fully accurate every single day, we might end up burning out and then failing our diet. So that's why injecting flexibility into our approach can reduce the accuracy, but it will increase our ability to be consistent. But it's important that we take note of the minimal requirement of accuracy for a certain goal to be achieved. Because if we become too flexible and too little accurate, this can end up sabotaging the whole process as well. So it's a balance in terms of how we approach it. So we want to be consistent, that's for sure. And then we need to balance how accurate are we to be at, such that we can be consistent going forward. So we want to strive for all the highest quality work we can put in on a consistent basis without burning out. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more episodes helping you live a fit plant-based lifestyle. If you have any wishes for topics or even guests that you would like to hear on this podcast, do let me know via our socials at My Vegan Personal Trainer. You'll find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Change your mindset, change your life.
Thanks for listening to the My Vegan Personal Trainer podcast with Rami at www.myveganpersonaltrainer.com.